Hi, total recap here. Today we will be going through the events of the 2004 action fantasy movie Hellboy, directed by Guillermo del Toro. Warning, this video contains spoilers, so watch at your own risk. Now let's get right into the movie. The movie opens with the voice of Professor Broom asking a question that will portray the rest of the film. What is it that makes a man a man? Is it his origins, the way things start? The voiceover goes on to give some backstory. It is 1944, nearing the end of World War II. Hitler is resorting to the occult in a desperate attempt to turn the tide of war in his favor. Before embarking on the mission, young Professor Broom requests that the military soldiers be given rosary beads on an island off the coast of Scotland. The sergeant in command, on the other hand, merely laughs at Broom, treating him as a crazy moron. When American forces arrive at a series of ruins, they discover a group of Nazi scientists commanded by Rasputin and IIsa. They are guarded by Kroenen, a strange person in a gas mask who is said to be Hitler's top assassin. Rasputin attaches himself to a mystery device that is supposed to open a doorway to another world and awaken the 7 gods of chaos. Meanwhile, American forces fire grenades into the facility as the link opens, killing some scientists. Kroenen then assaults the Americans, killing a number of them and injuring Professor Broom. Broom sneaks over to a wounded soldier and grabs a grenade, which he throws close beneath the gateway. Kroenen pauses his attack in an attempt to detonate the grenade, but he is unable to do it in time. The portal and Kroenen's right hand are both destroyed as the grenade detonates. After being pierced by a portal piece, Kroenen is assumed dead. At the end of the scene, Rasputin is sucked through the portal, which closes it. Next, Professor Broom gets his leg wrapped as the other troops explore the island, afraid that something could have passed through the portal before they could lock it. Broom and another soldier came face to face with an odd red ape-like creature with a gigantic stone hand. The troops are terrified, but Broom uses a Baby Ruth candy bar to entice the beast. They understand that this thing, whatever it is only a baby, and is thus largely harmless to them. The troops give the monster the name Hellboy because of its demonic look. It is then depicted in the film's credits that Hellboy's place in the modern culture is that of an urban legend, like Bigfoot or other such monsters. 60 years later, after the events of the first scene, a much elderly Professor Broom is being evaluated by physicians. The news isn't good. He has cancer and there's not much that can be done about it. Broom sees his buddy Tom Manning on TV answering questions about a recent photo allegedly taken of Hellboy on his way home. Manning denies that Hellboy exists. Meanwhile, at a waste disposal facility, a lone individual on a motor scooter enters. He puts on the speakerphone and introduces himself as John Myers, a new FBI training graduate who is supposed to be reporting for his first assignment. A secret elevator transports him downstairs where he finds himself in a massive library with a water tank in the center. Myers is asked to turn the pages of several books by a mysterious voice, and a bizarre fish-like humanoid emerges from the tank. Professor Broom appears and presents the fishman as Abe Sapien. Myers is about to introduce himself, but Abe interrupts by reciting a number of facts about Myers supposedly out of nowhere. Abe has a special brain, according to Broom, which allows him to have telepathic powers. Abe is fed a few rotten eggs by Broom, a weird delicacy that Abe has developed a liking for. Professor Broom then introduces Myers as the newest ally of the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, the BPRD. The movie then transitions to distant snowy mountains. IIsa and Kroenen are on their way to a sacred site. They assassinate their guide and resurrect Rasputin with his blood. Elsewhere, Myers is given a brief overview of the BPRD and its operations before meeting his boss, Agent Clay. Myers receives 2 Baby Ruth bars from Broom, who wishes him well. Clay then leads Myers into a massive vault-like area where he meets the BPRD's pride and joy, Hellboy, who has now become an adult. Myers' presence does not excite Hellboy, who sees him as another in a long line of security measures that he must endure. Suddenly, an alarm goes off midway through their introduction, and Hellboy cheerfully sets out to go to work. According to a newscaster, the alarm has been sounded at a nearby museum, and the guards inside have not responded. Clay invites Hellboy and Abe Sapien, who is wearing some dive gear to keep his gills hydrated, to the museum. Clay then states that there is a big creature of some sort within. Professor Broom, who is called his father by Hellboy, tells that a statue was shattered and whatever contained inside was released. As Abe tries to figure out what the creature is, Hellboy draws his signature weapon, the Samaritan, and enters the building to investigate. Just after Hellboy sees the beast, Abe comes up with the name Samael for it and informs Hellboy about it. Hellboy fires a couple of shots at the creature before leaving, just as Abe tells him that Samael is also known as the Hound of Resurrection. When Hellboy turns around, he is attacked and thrown out of a window. Hellboy runs across Rasputin and recognizes his voice. Before Samael attacks again, Rasputin provides a terrible prediction regarding Hellboy's destiny. Myers then arrives and shoots Samael, much to Hellboy's disgust, as he hates being aided. Next, Myers discovers a bizarre seed-like creature on Hellboy's arm as Hellboy tries to reload his weapon. Hellboy tears it off and hands it over to Myers, telling him to keep it for research. He then uses a tracking bullet on Samael, which leaves a green fluid trail that can be followed. Hellboy pursues Samael through a crowd and many lanes of traffic. Myers tries to catch up but is hit by a passing car and is on the verge of death until Hellboy reappears to block another approaching car, allowing Myers to cross. Hellboy then pursues Samael through the underground system, losing touch temporarily as a passing train passes over his head. Hellboy, tired of fighting, grabs a railroad track and electrocutes Samael. Because Hellboy possesses fire resistance, he is unhurt by the attack. Next, Hellboy switches off his radio and visits his old buddy Liz Sherman, who used to work at BPRD, but has since committed herself to a mental institution. Myers and a few other agents finally show up to return Hellboy. When Myers pulls up Liz Sherman's file, he discovers that she is a pyrokinetic, a person who can start fire with their thoughts. They also get to know that when she was young, she ignited a massive fire that killed hundreds of people. In the next scene, Professor Broom and Tom Manning are talking about Hellboy's latest adventures. Manning is not pleased with Hellboy or any of the BPRD employees, whom he refers to as freaks. Professor Broom is then shown what happened at the museum by Abe Sapien's telepathy. Kroenen murdered the guards while Rasputin liberated Samael by enchanting the beast with a form of magic that creates 2 new creatures for every one that dies. During the telepathic contact, Abe discovers that the professor is severely ill. Professor Broom then asks Abe to keep this information hidden from Hellboy. Back at the base, Abe and Broom are examining Hellboy. They discover a cluster of eggs in Hellboy's arm near the attachment of a spore-like item. According to Broom, Hellboy will return to the subway the next day to seek for additional eggs. That night, Rasputin plays a covert visit to Liz in the mental institution. He activates her fire-starting talents and unlocks her darkest memory, the day of the explosion which destroys the hospital. The next morning, when Hellboy is filing his horns, something he does regularly to appear more normal, Hellboy and Broom debate. Meanwhile, Myers offers to talk with Liz in the hopes of re-engaging her in the BPRD. To discover the eggs, Hellboy, Clay, Abe, and 2 other agents return to the sewers. Abe attempts to catch a cluster of eggs by jumping into a cistern, but is attacked and seriously damaged by a Samael. Another Samael attacks and kills the 2 agents, prompting Hellboy to pursue them. Clay is left behind and is stabbed by Kroenen, who then seems to take his own life. Hellboy pursues Samael through a metro station, eventually murdering him by slamming him onto an oncoming train. As he returns, he is dismayed to see his companions injured. Back at the BPRD, Manning says that Abe will recover, but Clay has been severely injured and will most likely not make it through the night. Manning and Hellboy argue, both enraged by what has occurred. Liz, on the other hand, has opted to return to BPRD. When Liz comes in and announces that she is going on a date with Myers, Hellboy is in his room struggling to prepare a letter for Liz that expresses his affections for her. Hellboy is enraged, but he sets his feelings aside and chooses to follow them. Elsewhere, Broom is doing an autopsy on Kroenen and discovers that he is over 100 years old and that his corpse has been horribly disfigured, due to a form of masochism. When the professor leaves, Kroenen restarts his heart with a clockwork device, allowing Rasputin to enter the BPRD. Rasputin approaches the professor, mocking him for not understanding Hellboy's actual mission or identity. Broom answers that Hellboy's true title, in his opinion, is son. Broom is then given a look into the future when Hellboy is the cause of Armageddon. Professor Broom is then executed by Kroenen. When Myers and Liz are informed of what has occurred, they are still on their date, with Hellboy observing. Hellboy is devastated by the loss and has been unable to eat or speak for several days. Meanwhile, Manning becomes head of the BPRD, a position that he despises, and declares that he will lead a team to Russia in search of Samael's eggs. In Russia, Hellboy uses magic to resurrect a corpse and obtains instructions to Rasputin's mausoleum. Inside, the group is separated, with Liz and Myers in one way and Hellboy and Manning in the other. Hellboy and Manning track down Kroenen's hideout, and Hellboy saves Manning's life by hitting Kroenen with his stone fist. Kroenen tries to draw Hellboy into a spiked pit, but Manning blocks his attack by throwing a gear at him. Hellboy then throws Kroenen into the pit and kills him with a massive piece of equipment. After the battle, Hellboy and Manning express gratitude for one another's efforts, having developed a bond of mutual respect. Elsewhere, the egg chamber is discovered by Liz and Myers. Hellboy joins them, but the Samael copies overpower him. Liz encourages Myers to assault her in the hopes that her fire powers will be activated. It works, and all the Samaels are destroyed once and for all. However, Rasputin and IIsa use the chance to kidnap Hellboy and his companions. Rasputin wants Hellboy to use his right hand of doom to set the 7 gods of chaos free once and for all. Hellboy resists but finds out that Liz is seriously hurt and may not live. He accepts Rasputin's demands and calls himself Anung Rama. Hellboy's horns grow to full length and he starts to breathe smoke, indicating that he has fully accepted his demon heritage. Before Hellboy opens the ultimate seal of the gods, Myers is able to free himself. Myers asks Hellboy to remember who he is and tosses the prayer beads that used to be Professor Broom's. Hellboy recalls that he is not obligated to be evil. He has a choice, and his father died so that he might make that decision. Hellboy pulls his horns off and uses them to stab Rasputin, declaring that he doesn't need Rasputin to tell him who he is. Rasputin's death releases a monster, Behemoth, the 7th god's last envoy, that increases in size rapidly. Myers and Liz are escorted out of the room by Hellboy, who is given a weapon by Myers, a cluster of explosives designed for use against Samael's eggs. Hellboy fights the Behemoth for a long time before ultimately convincing it to swallow him. After entering inside it, Hellboy explodes the hand grenades and ultimately destroys the Behemoth. When Hellboy reappears, Myers informs him that Liz has lost her pulse. However, as Hellboy kneels down and says something that appears to be a prayer, Liz opens her eyes. She then inquires as to what he said. Hellboy says that he was speaking with individuals on the other side, pleading with them to release Liz, saying that he would gladly cross over himself to save her. The two then kiss passionately. Moved by his feelings, Liz produces the flames. Liz's fire consumes them both in a matter of seconds, but Hellboy is untouched since he is fireproof. And that was my recap of the movie. Hope you enjoyed it. Now comment on what your favorite part was, and make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time, take care, and goodbye.